What if the biggest clue to Alex Eala's future isn't sitting in a trophy cabinet, but inside a corporate strategy meeting? Because when Marriott Bonvoy announced Eala as the face of its Tennis the World campaign across Asia Pacific excluding China, the most interesting part wasn't a rumored paycheck, a luxury perk, or even the prestige of landing another major international partnership. It was the timing. Marriott made its move before the US Open, at a point when Eala's value was rising quickly, but before another Grand Slam had the chance to dramatically change the conversation around her. And that raises a much bigger question. What exactly did Marriott see in Alex Eala that made waiting seem unnecessary? On the surface, this looks like a familiar sports sponsorship story. A young athlete starts winning, her profile grows, and a global company wants to attach its name to that momentum. We've seen that formula hundreds of times. But look a little closer, and this deal starts to feel different. The campaign itself provides the first clue. Tennis the World isn't simply built around Eala wearing a Marriott logo while she competes. It connects tennis, travel, experiences, and Marriott Bonvoy's loyalty ecosystem. That means Eala isn't just being positioned as an athlete who can advertise a company. She may be valuable because she can connect that company with an audience Marriott wants to reach. To understand why, consider where Eala stood when the announcement arrived. She was already one of the most important athletes the Philippines had produced in tennis, and her rise had accelerated dramatically. The source describes a breakthrough stretch that included a major Wimbledon victory over defending champion Iga Swiatek and a title-winning run in Washington, where Eala defeated high-level opponents on her way to her first WTA singles championship. Her ranking had climbed to a career-high number 20, according to the source, putting her in unprecedented territory for Filipino tennis. That alone would attract sponsors, but Marriott appears to have been looking at something beyond ranking points. The first clue is that the company didn't wait for another Grand Slam result. In sports marketing, waiting can feel safer. Let the athlete perform. See whether the momentum continues. If she makes a huge run, then sign her while everybody is talking about her. The problem with that strategy is obvious. If everybody sees the breakout coming, you're already late. A spectacular Grand Slam performance can completely reset an athlete's commercial value. Suddenly every brand wants a meeting. Every category has potential bidders, and the cost of getting involved rises. Marriott's decision suggests it was comfortable making the bet before another major result could alter that market. That becomes even more interesting when compared with Emma Raducanu's commercial explosion after winning the 2021 US Open. Raducanu became one of the hottest endorsement properties in sports almost overnight, and major brands quickly lined up after the trophy was already in her hands. With Eala, Marriott's approach appears to be the opposite. Don't wait for the defining moment. Position yourself before it. That doesn't mean Marriott somehow knew exactly what Eala would do next. No company can guarantee a tennis result. Rankings fluctuate, injuries happen, draws get difficult, and even elite players lose unexpectedly. The smarter interpretation is that Marriott may not have needed Eala to win one particular tournament. The company may have believed her value existed independently of one result. And that brings us to geography. Marriott didn't simply describe Eala as an ambassador for the entire world. The source repeatedly emphasizes a very specific territory, Asia Pacific excluding China. That wording matters. China represents one of Asia's largest tennis markets, so excluding it immediately makes you ask why the remaining region is strategically important. Once you focus on Southeast Asia and the surrounding Asia-Pacific markets, Eala becomes an unusually compelling figure. She is Filipino. She represents a country with an enormous international diaspora. Her fan support isn't limited to one tournament or one city. Filipino communities can turn up for her thousands of miles from Manila, bringing flags, chants, and an unmistakable home court atmosphere. The source points to a Toronto example, in which thousands of tickets reportedly moved rapidly once Eala was attached to a session. Whether you're running a tennis tournament, selling travel, or operating a loyalty program, that kind of fan behavior gets attention. A ranking tells you how good an athlete is. Ticket demand tells you how strongly people care. For marketers, those are two very different numbers. Then there's Marriott's own product. Marriott Bonvoy is a loyalty program. Its business depends on people traveling, booking hotels, accumulating benefits, returning to the ecosystem, and choosing Marriott properties again instead of competitors. That makes Eala particularly interesting because tennis itself is a global travel sport. Fans fly between countries to attend tournaments. The calendar moves from Australia to Europe, North America, Asia, and beyond. Players themselves become associated with destinations, and Marriott's Tennis the World campaign fits naturally into that behavior. The source highlights the Australian Open as an especially important part of the strategy. Marriott Bonvoy has been connected with the tournament, and the campaign offers members access to tennis-related experiences and benefits. Now consider that from the perspective of an Eala supporter in Southeast Asia, the Australian Open is geographically and culturally more accessible than many other Grand Slams. Melbourne sits in a time zone that is far easier for much of Asia than New York or Paris. Travel from Southeast Asia is also significantly more practical than crossing the Pacific to reach the United States. Suddenly, the strategy becomes clearer. Eala attracts passionate fans. Fans want to see Eala. Tennis encourages travel. Marriott sells travel experiences and loyalty. That's where athlete endorsement turns into customer acquisition. And Marriott's own language, as presented in the source, reinforces that interpretation. Instead of focusing entirely on future trophies, executives emphasized Eala's authenticity, inspirational qualities, and connection to the region. That last part is especially important. Connected to the region is a commercial asset. A global celebrity can generate awareness, but someone audiences view as genuinely representing them can create emotional attachment that's difficult to manufacture. Eala doesn't need a marketing department to invent her Southeast Asian identity. It already exists. She carries the Philippine flag every time she competes. Filipino supporters already claim her victories as national moments. Her story already resonates with audiences who historically haven't had many tennis players from their region competing at this level. That makes her useful to Marriott in a way that goes beyond conventional celebrity. The source also references Marriott research, indicating extremely high participation in loyalty programs among Asia-Pacific travelers outside China. If that market is already comfortable with loyalty ecosystems, the competition isn't simply convincing people to join a program. It's convincing them which program deserves their emotional and financial commitment. Sports can help do that, and an athlete like Eala can become the bridge. This also explains why obsessing over the rumored value of the contract misses the larger story. Various numbers may circulate online, but the source explicitly warns that Marriott did not publicly confirm a specific contract value or the extravagant perks sometimes attached to those rumors. That distinction matters. Without reliable disclosure, claiming a precise multi-million-dollar figure would turn speculation into supposed fact. The more meaningful information is public. Marriott chose Eala, chose a specific region, tied her to a tennis and travel campaign, and did so while her career trajectory was still climbing. That is already significant without inventing a number. And there's another reason brands will pay attention. Major sponsorships can create momentum of their own. Once one respected multinational company places a meaningful bet on an athlete, other brands notice. Airlines can see the travel connection. Fashion companies can see the cultural visibility. Financial services companies can see a young, internationally connected audience. Technology companies can see social engagement and regional growth. One deal doesn't guarantee another, but it changes the conversation. Instead of asking, is Alex Eala commercially valuable? Executives can start asking, why did Marriott move first? That is a much more powerful question. We've seen similar patterns around global tennis stars before. Naomi Osaka's commercial profile expanded rapidly as her athletic success and cultural relevance intersected. Coco Gauff developed appeal extending far beyond her ranking because audiences connected with her personality, story, and potential. Eala's path will obviously be her own. And comparing commercial trajectories doesn't guarantee identical tennis careers, but the principle is similar. The athletes with the largest commercial ceilings usually offer brands more than victories. They represent something. For Eala, that something may be the emergence of Southeast Asia as a more visible force in global tennis. She represents possibility to young Filipino players. She represents national pride to supporters. She represents a growing audience to tournaments. And to a company like Marriott, she potentially represents travelers. That's why the timing matters so much. Marriott wasn't necessarily betting that Eala would win the next Grand Slam. It was betting that her connection with this audience would remain valuable even when she loses. That is a much stronger form of endorsement. Every tennis player loses. Even the greatest players in history have difficult weeks. If a sponsorship only makes sense when an athlete is lifting trophies, it's fragile. If it makes sense because that athlete has become the emotional center of a growing market, the relationship can survive normal competitive ups and downs, and that may be the biggest takeaway from this entire story. Alex Eala's next chapter isn't only happening on a tennis court. She has entered a different room now. The room where global companies study markets, audiences, travel patterns, loyalty data, and cultural influence, then decide which athlete belongs at the center of that strategy. Marriott made its decision early. Whether other major brands follow remains to be seen. But if another international company announces Alex Eala as an ambassador in the months ahead, remember this moment. Remember that Marriott didn't wait for the perfect headline or another giant trophy. It looked at the athlete, looked at the audience around her, looked at the region it wanted to grow in, and decided the pieces already fit. The question now isn't simply how high Alex Eala can climb in the rankings, it's how big the Eala effect can become outside them. And if Marriott's timing tells us anything, at least one global company believes the answer could be much bigger than tennis.